Hello, my name is Laura Wilkinson, and this is a presentation that's based upon the criminally deviant behavior of underage drinking in the United States. In this presentation, I intend to provide specific legal consequences of the behavior, and I will indicate the historical roots of the deviancy of underage drinking from social norms. Following that, I will provide the social context of underage drinking, which will include the populations that are most at risk and the costs to society from underage drinking. And then I will present an explanation of the deviancy according to the social control systems associated with restraining or correcting this behavior. Finally, I'm going to provide my critical appraisal of the social control system, and I intend to include some recommendations for dealing with this behavior in the future. So some of the legal consequences that are associated with underage drinking, according to my research in Tipton, it included punishment in the forms of, say, driver's license suspension. There's the potential of possible jail time, fines that can be assessed, as well as a judgment of community service, and or there's potential mandatory alcohol awareness classes. And another consideration from Tipton went beyond the punishments that are disposed from a law enforcement or a judicial handing, but rather from the aspects of punishment being disposed, say, regarding suspension in academics or suspension and potential dismissal of extracurricular activities, and the potential of increased or canceled driver's insurance policies. So next I did some research and I found that the historical roots from social norms of underage drinking, according to What Are the Facts, in 1984 the National Drinking Age Act was passed and it raised the drinking age to 21. The article provided that over the course of American history that there's been transformations in the societal reflection and the policies regarding the drinking age. So, for example, with the passage of the 26th Amendment in like the early 1970s, the drinking age was actually lowered to 18. And when that generated individual states to lower their drinking age to 18. So, What Are the Facts also referenced that in like pre-revolutionary America, young apprentices were provided alcohol from their employers as payment after a day of working hard. So as you can see throughout the course of history, the deviance of underage drinking being criminal has changed and it's varied. Another aspect of the historical roots that I found in our book Interbitson, it indicated and referenced that the drinking of alcohol is a big part of like college rituals, and it's encouraged in conjunction with fraternities and sporting events. The setting of the college life allows these young new students to test the boundaries of their new freedoms that they found. Young adults find that drinking provides a method to overcome like social shyness. The book also referenced a study that demonstrated students' view of drinking as an activity in which they associated it with bonding or escaping and having fun. Interbitson further expanded on the acceptance of this behavior as it's essentially a behavior that is really ignored by college administration and even law enforcement. So next I researched and found some historical roots from the social norms of underage drinking. And it was indicated in an article, What Are the Facts, that in 1984 the National Drinking Age Act was passed that raised the drinking age to 21. But prior to that, the article provided that over the course of American history, there's been transformations in what the societal reflection and various policies have been regarding drinking age. So, for example, the passage of the 26th Amendment in the early 1970s, the drinking age was actually lowered to 18, and that generated individual states then to lower their drinking age to 18. That article, What Are the Facts, also referenced that, like in pre-revolutionary America, when young apprentices completed a difficult or hard day of work, their reward from their employer was actually payment in the form of alcohol. So that kind of indicates throughout the history deviancy of underage drinking being criminal. It's changed and varied. Another aspect of historical roots I found in Inderbitsen was where they referenced that drinking alcohol is a big part of college rituals, and it's encouraged, like in conjunction with fraternities and sporting events. And the setting of college life allows young new students to basically test the boundaries of their new freedoms that they found. Young adults find that drinking provides a method to overcome social shyness. Inderbitsen also went on to reference that they had done a study that demonstrated students' view of drinking as an activity for bonding and escaping or having fun. Inderbitsen also expanded on the acceptance of the behavior, as it's essentially a behavior that's ignored by college administration and law enforcement. So while reflecting on the social context of underage drinking, I found that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on their website had an article, Underage Drinking, and that provided that the populations most at risk to undertake underage drinking include those that are in the process of a developmental transition, those who are considered risk takers, those who have low expectancies, and those who have personality characteristics such as being disruptive, hyperactive, depressed, withdrawn, or even rebellious. Next, Societal Cost of Underage Drinking website provided information from 2001 on the cost to society of underage drinking by stating that it accounts for 16% of alcohol sales, but further to 3,170 deaths and 2.6 million other harmful events, which have cost a total of $61.9 billion. Now, of that amount, it was broken down to indicate that $5.4 billion is attributed to medical expenses, $14.9 billion is attributed to the loss of work, and $41.6 billion is attributed to the loss of quality of life. The website further indicated that alcohol is attributable toward violence and traffic crashes, and those costs are what have dominated those that were referenced above. The social control system associated with restraining underage drinking, I was able to find that on a website, Young Binge Drinking Strategy, and that came from the Center for Applied Research Solutions, Preventing Adolescent Binge Drinking, and the information gave some applicable ideas toward restraining the behavior, and those included strategic use of data, which would identify problems that in turn would allow for planning and monitoring of progress. Second of all, they indicated community organizing would ensure community stakeholders being identified, and then that involvement would help gain the public support as well as help change the community norms. Policy advocacy is a third alternative process, and that would allow for changes to be made in policy that could be mandated as laws or potentially even as voluntary changes in the form of, say, business procedures. And finally, the indication of media advocacy is a strategic use of media that helps gain public and policy support for change. Inderbitsen referenced, and I hope I am pronouncing this correctly, Hershey's social control theory, and it defined crime as acts of force undertaken in pursuit of self-interest. So therefore, the correlation of underage drinking as being an act taken in pursuit of self-interest is certainly a noteworthy consideration in the comparison. Furthermore, Gottfredson and Hershey suggest that low self-control develops from the absence of discipline. And so then I considered from Inderbitson the 6 elements provided that make up the construct of low self-control. And the first one is criminal acts provide immediate gratification of desires. And in consideration of that, the immediate gratification that comes with underage drinking can be considered from the social acceptance that participating in the drinking at a party would provide. Second, criminal acts provide simple gratification of desires. So in that consideration, the simple gratification that is received from the underage drinking comes from the lack of courage to say no, and the underage drinker is receiving the gratification by fitting in easily. The third consideration is criminal acts are exciting, risky, or thrilling. So with underage drinking, it provides a sense of risk, especially for those with low self-control, and it provides that feeling of being adventuresome. The fourth consideration was crimes provide few or meager long-term benefits. So the behavior associated with underage drinking, especially in those with low self-control, would lead to the potential for unstable long-term friendships. Fifth consideration, crimes require little skill or planning. So with underage drinking, the opportunities are usually dropped in the laps of those that have low self-control, and the behavior of partaking, it utilizes virtually no academic skill. Sixth consideration, crimes often result in pain or discomfort for the victims. So the application of this element comes in the form of realization after the fact, when the victim is on the other side of the vehicle accident caused from low self-control that led to the underage drinking. So then I was able to research and evaluate a comparison to determine the success of some of the various forms of social control systems. For example, the American Medical Association's article, Effectiveness of Public Health Strategies to Reduce College Binge Drinking and Underage Alcohol Use, it indicated that a dramatic example of success was evident of the control theory, and that the policy change of raising the minimum drinking age, it generated life savings of approximately 16,500 young lives between the period of 1975 and 1996. And then the article provided a side-by-side chart comparison that had various strategies and the level of effectiveness. Some of those included like media campaigns being utilized, and it magnified the effectiveness through enforcement efforts, and effectiveness by changing the attitudes toward alcohol and the intentions to use. Another was controls on alcohol advertising, such as billboards and public buses, and that's been a strong positive effect on those attitudes toward alcohol. Conditional use permits for alcohol outlets included 21 and over entry restrictions, enforcement of laws against buying alcohol for minors, keg restriction laws. Those kinds of things have provided an effective way of reducing access to those underage. And prohibition of alcohol sponsorship at public events, like county fairs, parks, and beaches, and providing some community sponsorship of alcohol-free activities for youth, those have provided an effectiveness in the aspect of community norms. Finally, I would suggest a few options as a consideration for expanding social control theories toward handling underage drinking in the United States. And some of those expanded options would include like a mandated alcohol victim impact discussion as part of school curriculum. Another consideration could be parental coaching and mentoring that provides signs and options of prevention, similar to that provided to parents by insurance carriers in conjunction with the Secretary of State when children begin to drive. And finally, a system of rewards could be utilized for those who pledge to refrain from underage drinking. This concludes my presentation of underage drinking in the United States from the viewpoint of criminal deviance. So thank you for your time and consideration.